Captain Ta stood on the bridge of the stellar horizon, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back. The tall, blue-skinned alien looked at the large screen showing the yellow star. It was just one of many stars they had mapped this cycle. Nothing special. Another boring day in space, he said to no one in particular. Lieutenant G looked up from his control panel. The young officer's scales shimmered under the bridge lights. Captain, we've almost finished scanning the outer planets of this system. They're all dead rocks, as expected. Captain Ta nodded. The Galactic Confederation had sent them to map this small corner of the Orion Arm. No one expected to find anything interesting. These systems had been briefly scanned centuries ago. The records showed nothing worth a closer look. What about the inner planets? Tai asked. Jay flicked through the data on his screen. Gas giant, 2 small rocky planets too close to the star, and he paused. The third planet is a Class D wasteland. Old records say toxic atmosphere and radiation damage. Science Officer Han looked up from her station. Unlike the scaled G and the blue-skinned Tai, Han had pale pink skin and large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Class D, she asked. Let me see that. Han moved to G's station. Her 6-fingered hands danced over the controls. Strange, she said. The old records are at least 300 years old. We should take new readings. Lieutenant G made a sound that indicated annoyance. Why waste time on a wasteland planet? We have 16 more star systems to map this cycle. Captain Todd watched Han carefully. In 15 years of deep space missions together, he knew when the science officer saw something interesting. You found something, didn't you? He asked. Han nodded slowly. Maybe. The planet's energy readings don't match what we'd expect from a Class D world. Probably just background radiation, Jay said, clearly wanting to move on. Let's take a closer look, Captain Todd decided. Adjust course to the third planet. 3 days later, the stellar horizon entered orbit around the third planet. From space, it looked surprisingly blue, with white clouds and green landmasses. This can't be right, Lieutenant G said, checking his instruments again. The atmosphere shows oxygen, nitrogen, and normal trace gases. No toxic levels of anything. Han was busy at her station, her large eyes reflecting the blue glow of her screens. Captain, I'm detecting artificial structures on the surface. Large ones, and energy signatures everywhere. Show me, Tide ordered. The main screen changed to show the planet's surface. Even from orbit, they could see vast cities, connecting roads, and large areas that seemed to be farms. This planet is inhabited, Captain Tai asked, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. Heavily, Han replied. And the technology level is advanced. I'm detecting fusion power, matter conversion, and even signs of early gravity manipulation. Lieutenant G's scales flashed a pattern that showed his confusion. This must be a mistake. 300 years ago, this planet was reported as a toxic wasteland. No advanced life could evolve that quickly. Unless, Han said slowly, they were already here and our records were wrong. Or what? Tai asked. Or they survived whatever made this planet a wasteland and rebuilt. The bridge fell silent. The idea seemed impossible. No known species could survive a Class D environment without massive protection. I'm detecting communications, Han announced suddenly. Millions of signals, using various technologies from simple radio waves to quantum-encrypted transmissions. Can you translate any of it? Captain Tai asked. Han's fingers moved quickly over her controls. Working on it. There seemed to be thousands of different languages. Lieutenant G looked shocked. Thousands? That's not possible. Most unified civilizations standardize to 1 or 2 languages. Han looked up from her screen. I don't think this is a unified civilization in the way we understand it. There seem to be many different cultures, nations, or groups. Captain Tai made a decision. Launch a probe. I want detailed scans and visual confirmation. The probe entered the planet's atmosphere an hour later. The bridge crew watched the main screen as images from the probe appeared. They showed sprawling cities with tall buildings, some reaching into the clouds. Vehicles moved on the ground, in the air, and even underwater. In other areas, vast forests and restored wetlands spread across what seemed to be previously damaged land. "Look at the environmental engineering," Han said with admiration. "They've rebuilt entire ecosystems." The probe sent back more images. People walking on streets, gathering in parks, working in fields. The inhabitants were bipedal, with 2 arms and legs, and they came in various colors, from pale to dark brown. "What species is this?" Lieutenant G asked. "I don't recognize them from any Confederation database." Han checked her instruments and ran a quick analysis. "They're not in our database. They must be native to this planet." "That's impossible," Jai insisted. "No intelligent species could survive a Class D environment long enough to rebuild like this." Captain Todd watched the images with growing interest. "Unless they caused the Wasteland condition themselves, and then fixed it." The probe continued its journey, showing more of the planet. It captured images of massive machines cleaning oceans, devices pulling carbon from the air, and huge greenhouses growing food in previously barren areas. "Listen to this," Han said suddenly, playing an audio transmission the probe had captured. A clear voice spoke in a language none of them understood, but the computer quickly translated. "Today marks the 200th anniversary of the Great Restoration. When our ancestors nearly destroyed our world, they found the courage to change. Now Earth blooms again, and we remember their sacrifice." "Earth," Captain Tay repeated. "So that's what they call it." "And they're called humans," Han added, reading from her screen. "They nearly destroyed their own planet, then spent centuries rebuilding it." Lieutenant G seemed unable to process this information. "But our records were simply a snapshot of a planet in crisis," Captain Ta said. "We saw the destruction and assumed nothing could survive. We were wrong." The probe sent back more data. Han gasped as she analyzed it. "Captain, their DNA structure, it's remarkable. They've adapted to resist radiation and toxins. Their bodies can repair damage that would kill most species. They're incredibly resilient." "You mean they survived in a true wasteland?" G asked. Han nodded. "Not just survived. They thrived and then fixed their world." Captain Tay made another decision. "Send the first contact signal. Follow Confederation protocols." Lieutenant G looked concerned. "Captain, we should report back to Confederation Command first. This discovery is unprecedented." "We will report," Ta said, "but these humans deserve the respect of proper contact. Send the signal." Han sent the standard greeting used for first contact situations, a simple mathematical sequence followed by basic language primers designed to establish peaceful intentions. The response came less than 5 minutes later. Han's eyes widened as she read the incoming data. "Captain, they've replied with greetings in 47 different Confederation languages, including our own." "How is that possible?" G asked, his scales now showing patterns of alarm. "It seems," Captain Ta said slowly, "that while we thought their planet was a wasteland not worth visiting, they've been studying us all along." The main screen changed to show a human with short black hair and dark eyes, wearing a simple uniform. The human smiled and spoke in perfect Orion Standard, the main language of the Confederation. "Greetings, Captain Ta of the Stellar Horizon. I am Director Sun of Earth's First Contact Division. We've been expecting someone to notice us eventually. Welcome to Earth. We have much to discuss." The bridge fell silent as the crew of the Stellar Horizon faced a truth that would change the Confederation forever. They had not discovered humans. Humans had allowed themselves to be discovered. And the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Ta stood in the shuttle bay of the Stellar Horizon. Next to him, Science Officer Han checked her equipment, while Lieutenant G adjusted his environmental suit. "Are the suits really necessary?" Han asked, looking at her readings. The human atmosphere seems perfectly breathable. We follow protocol, Captain Tay replied. Until we confirm it's safe, we wear protection. Lieutenant G nodded in agreement. Class D planets don't just become paradise worlds. There must be lingering dangers. The shuttle doors close, and the small craft left the stellar horizon. Through the viewport, they watched Earth grow larger. Blue oceans, green lands, and white clouds filled their view. It's beautiful, Han said quietly. The shuttle entered the atmosphere, following the landing coordinates the humans had sent. Below them stretched a vast city with tall buildings, wide roads, and many parks filled with trees. Look at all the green, Captain Ta said. They've managed to restore plant life everywhere. The shuttle landed on a large platform. Through the windows, they could see a group of humans waiting. They wore simple blue uniforms but carried no visible weapons. Remember, Captain Ta told his crew, we represent the Galactic Confederation. Be respectful but cautious. The shuttle door opened. Captain Ta led the way, stepping onto Earth for the first time. The gravity felt slightly stronger than on the ship. The air, even filtered through his suit, smelled fresh, with hints of growing things. A human stepped forward from the greeting party. It was the same person they had seen on the screen, Director Sun. Welcome to Seoul Spaceport, Director Sun said, speaking clear Orion standard. We're honored to be your hosts. Captain Tai performed the formal Confederation greeting gesture. We thank you for your welcome. I am Captain Ta. These are Science Officer Han and Lieutenant G. Director Sun smiled. You may remove your environmental suits if you wish. Our air is clean and contains no harmful elements for your species. We've studied your biology carefully. Lieutenant G looked alarmed. You've studied us. Of course, Sun replied simply. We've been observing Confederation ships passing through our system for decades. We've learned much about your people. Han was already checking her instruments. The air does seem safe, Captain. After a moment's hesitation, Captain Tad removed his helmet. The unfiltered air hit him with a wave of new scents, plants, water, a hint of machine oil, and something else he couldn't identify. This is unexpected, he admitted. Our records describe your world as toxic and radiation damage. Director Sun nodded. It was 300 years ago. We nearly destroyed ourselves with weapons and pollution. But we survived and rebuilt. A new human approached. This one was shorter, with longer hair tied back. This is Engineer Da, Sun introduced. She's our specialist in xenobiology. She can answer your scientific questions. Han immediately stepped forward, her scientist's curiosity obvious. How did your species survive in Class D conditions? The radiation levels alone should have been fatal. Engineer Da smiled. We adapted. Some died, but many survived. Over generations, our bodies changed to resist radiation and toxins. Then, as we rebuilt, we developed technology to heal our planet. Lieutenant G had finally removed his helmet, but he looked uncomfortable. Your technology seems advanced. Yet the Confederation had no record of your civilization. We chose isolation, came a new voice. They turned to see another human approaching. This one wore more formal clothes with symbols that suggested authority. Ambassador Kim, Director Sun said with a slight bow. The Confederation representatives have arrived. Ambassador Kim nodded to the aliens. Welcome to Earth. As I was saying, after our near extinction, we decided to focus inward, to heal our world and build a better society before reaching to the stars. We detected your ships long ago, but chose not to announce ourselves until we were ready. Captain Ta processed this information slowly. You're saying you could have contacted the Confederation years ago? Yes, Kim replied simply. But we needed time. Time to heal our world. Time to learn about you and decide if contact was wise. Later that day, the aliens were given a tour of Seoul. They rode in an open vehicle that floated above the road without touching it. Gravity manipulation, Han noted with interest. Very advanced. Engineer Day nodded. We developed it 50 years ago. It made rebuilding our cities much easier. They passed through areas where trees grew alongside buildings, and water flowed in clean canals. People walked or used small vehicles. Many stopped to stare at the aliens with curious but not fearful expressions. Your people seem very calm about our presence, Captain Tai observed. Director Sun smiled. We've been preparing them for first contact for generations. Earth's entertainment and education has long included the possibility of alien life. The tour took them to a large building with a dome roof. Inside was a meeting hall where other humans waited. The Global Unity Council, Ambassador Kim explained. Representatives from Earth's nations and territories. They wish to formally welcome you. An older human with silver hair stood and addressed them. Captain Ta, Officer Han, Lieutenant Ji, welcome to Earth. I am President Song of the Global Unity Council. We have watched the stars for centuries, hoping for this day. Lieutenant Ji could not hide his confusion. If you knew we were out there, why didn't you try to join the Confederation earlier? President Song's expression grew serious. After we nearly destroyed ourselves, we decided we needed to grow wiser before reaching outward. The old nations of Earth fought over resources, religion, and politics. We had to learn to live together first. And have you? Han asked. We are still learning, Song answered honestly. But we are ready to meet our galactic neighbors now. That evening, they were taken to a garden on top of a tall building. From there, they could see the city lights spread out below. In the distance, mountains rose against the night sky. 200 years ago, you could not see the stars from here, Engineer Day told them. The air was too dirty, and artificial light blocked the view. Now look. They looked up. The night sky was filled with stars, clear and bright. Beautiful, Han said. Lieutenant Ji had been quiet for some time. Now he asked, how did you do it? How did you change a ruined world back to this? Director Sun gazed out at the city, one step at a time. First, we stopped making things worse. Then we developed machines to clean the air and water. We created new types of plants that could grow in damaged soil. We rebuilt our cities to work with nature, not against it. It took generations, Ambassador Kim added. Many people worked their whole lives knowing they would never see the end result, but they did it for the future. Captain Ta looked at the humans with new respect. Most species would have given up, or left to find a new world. This is our home, Kim said simply. We chose to fix it rather than abandon it. Later, as they prepared to return to their ship for the night, Captain Ta noticed Lieutenant Ji staring at a group of human children playing in a nearby park. Something troubling you, Lieutenant? He asked. Ji's scales showed patterns of deep thought. Captain, everything I believed about Wasteland worlds. It was wrong. If we had never stopped here, we would never have known what we were missing. Captain Ta nodded slowly. Perhaps there are other Wasteland worlds we should revisit. There's something else, Ji continued. These humans, they're stronger than they look. They survived conditions that would kill our people. They rebuilt their entire world. And they knew about us long before we knew about them. Yes, Captain Ta agreed. I think the Confederation has much to learn from Earth. As they boarded the shuttle to return to the stellar horizon, Captain Ta looked back at the city. He couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these humans had in store for them. One thing was certain. The galaxy was about to change. The next morning, Captain Tai and his crew met with Director Sun in a large building made of glass and living plants. The walls were covered with green vines that seemed to be part of the building's design. This is the Historical Museum of Human Achievement, Director Sun explained. We thought you might want to learn more about our history. Science Officer Han nodded eagerly. Yes, please. I have so many questions. A new human approached them. He was older, with lines on his face that suggested many years of life. This is Historian Jun, Director Sun introduced. He will guide you today. Historian Jun bowed slightly. Welcome. It is my honor to share our story with you. The first room they entered was dark. Images appeared on the walls around them. Cities burning, skies filled with dark smoke, and oceans covered in oil. The Great Collapse, Joan explained. 250 years ago, Earth faced multiple crises: climate change, nuclear war, resource depletion, and new diseases. Billions died. Lieutenant G's scales showed patterns of distress. Your entire civilization nearly ended. Yes, Joan said simply. The old world did end, but humans survived. The images changed to show people living in underground shelters, wearing masks to breathe, and growing food in sealed rooms. For 50 years, much of Earth was truly a wasteland, Joan continued. Radiation, toxic chemicals, extreme weather, it was as your records described. But even then, we were planning how to fix it. They moved to another room. Here, the images showed huge machines cleaning water, artificial trees pulling carbon from the air, and people planting forests in damaged soil. The Great Restoration, Joan explained. It took 100 years of constant work. Each generation did their part, knowing they might not live to see the results. Captain Ta watched the images with growing respect. Most species would have given up. Historian Joan smiled. Many wanted to, but enough refused to accept defeat. Later that day, they traveled in a clear bubble vehicle that dove into the ocean. As they descended into the blue depths, lights appeared below them. New Atlantis, Director Sun announced, one of our underwater cities. The vehicle docked at an underwater station. They walked through a tunnel with clear walls that showed ocean life swimming all around them. You built cities underwater? Lieutenant G asked in amazement. When parts of our coastlines were lost to rising seas, we had two choices: retreat or adapt, explained a new human who waited for them. We chose to adapt. This is Dr. Min, Director Sun introduced. She studies human genetic adaptation. Dr. Min led them through the underwater city. People lived and worked in large bubbles connected by tunnels. Gardens grew food using special lights, and children played in water parks where the ocean itself seemed part of their playground. The first underwater habitats were just for research, Dr. Min explained. But over time, some humans developed better adaptations for high-pressure environments and low light. Now about 50 million people live in underwater communities worldwide. Science Officer Han could not contain her scientific curiosity. You mentioned adaptation. Do you mean natural genetic changes? Dr. Min nodded. Partly natural, partly helped by medical science. After the Great Collapse, humans were exposed to many environmental pressures. Those who survived often had useful genetic variations. She led them to a laboratory where screens showed human DNA. Look here, she pointed. These genes help repair radiation damage. These allow efficient oxygen use. These help detoxify harmful chemicals. Han studied the displays with great interest. Your species changed very quickly. We had to, Dr. Min said simply. Those who couldn't adapt didn't survive to have children. And later, as our science advanced, we helped the process along, not by changing who we are, but by bringing out strengths that were already in our genetic code. Lieutenant G looked troubled. So humans can now survive conditions that would kill most species in the Confederation. Dr. Min smiled. Many of us, yes. What you call wasteland conditions are what made us who we are today. The final stop on their tour was high in the mountains, where the air was thin. A research station clung to the rocky slopes, partly built into the mountain itself. The Himalayan Research Station, Director Sun told them as their vehicle landed. One of our most important scientific facilities. A tall human with a serious face met them at the entrance. Welcome to the mountain. I am Security Chief Yan. Please follow me. Inside the station, they saw humans working with advanced equipment. Some of the technology looked familiar to the aliens, but much of it was new. What do you study here? Captain Tai asked. The universe, Security Chief Yan replied. This station has been watching the stars, and listening to them for 200 years. She led them to a large room with a domed ceiling. When she pressed a button, the ceiling became transparent, showing the clear mountain sky. From here, we can see farther and clearer than almost anywhere else on Earth, Yeon explained. But this facility does more than observe. At another button press, a three-dimensional map appeared in the center of the room. It showed hundreds of star systems, with blinking lights marking planets and ships. Captain Ta froze. This is a map of Confederation space. Yes, Yeon admitted. We've been tracking Confederation movements for decades. We know about your 27 member species, your major trade routes, and your conflicts with the Outer Rim Alliance. Lieutenant G's scales flashed with alarm. You've been spying on us. Observing, Yeon corrected. Learning. We needed to understand what kind of neighbors we had before making ourselves known. Captain Tai studied the map carefully. Your sensors must be incredibly advanced to gather this much detail from such distances. We had to develop good eyes and ears, Yeon said. When you spend generations rebuilding a ruined world, you learn to watch carefully for threats. The map zoomed in to show the stellar horizon's path through space over the past year. You've been tracking us specifically? Han asked. Director Sun nodded. We noticed your ship approaching our system 3 months ago. We've been preparing for this meeting since then. Lieutenant G looked from the map to the humans. If you have this level of technology, you could have built starships. You could have joined the Confederation long ago. We weren't ready, Security Chief Yeon said firmly. And perhaps the Confederation wasn't ready for us. What do you mean? Captain Tai asked. Director Sun gestured to the map. Your civilization classifies worlds as habitable or non-habitable based on your own standards. You marked Earth as a wasteland not worth revisiting. How many other worlds and potential species have you overlooked because they don't fit your definition of life? The aliens fell silent, considering this question. We don't blame you, Historian Jun said gently. Each species sees the universe through the lens of its own experience. But humans have learned to look beyond the obvious, to find value in places others see only waste and danger. As they prepared to leave the mountain facility, Lieutenant Ji approached Dr. Min. I have a question, he said. If humans can adapt to so many different environments, radiation, underwater pressure, thin mountain air, what else can you survive? Dr. Min smiled. We have humans living in space stations, in desert domes, in Arctic research posts, and in volcanic regions. Some of us need special equipment, but many just need time to adapt. Remarkable, Ji murmured. Not really, Dr. Min replied. Adaptability is our greatest strength. When faced with a challenge, humans don't just survive. We find ways to thrive. As they flew back toward Seoul, Captain Ta gazed out at the landscapes below. Forests and cities, farms and mountains, a world that had been broken but made itself whole again. He couldn't help but wonder what the Galactic Confederation would make of these remarkable humans. 1 week after the stellar horizon discovered Earth, a large Confederation ship arrived in orbit. The sleek vessel was 3 times the size of Captain Ta's exploration ship. The Galactic Envoy has arrived, Lieutenant G reported from his station on the bridge. Admiral Jun requests your presence, Captain. Captain Ta nodded. He had expected this. News of humans had spread quickly through Confederation communication channels. A planet of adaptable beings who could survive in environments most species considered deadly was big news. Prepare a shuttle, he ordered. Science Officer Han and Lieutenant G will come with me. The Galactic Envoy was impressive inside. The main meeting room had a large round table with representatives from 5 different Confederation species. Admiral Jun sat at the head of the table. The tall, gray-skinned official wore the formal uniform of the Confederation fleet, decorated with symbols of high rank. Captain Tae, the Admiral said with a nod, your discovery has caused quite a stir in the Confederation. The humans have caused the stir, Tae corrected politely. We merely found them. Yes, Admiral Jun said, his tone serious. These humans, tell me, are they as remarkable as your reports suggest? Before Captain Tai could answer, the doors opened. Director Sun entered with Ambassador Kim and a new human they hadn't met before. May I present Earth President Song? Director Sun announced. President Song was an older human with calm eyes and a confident manner. She wore simple but elegant clothes with a small pin showing Earth's image. Thank you for coming to our system, Admiral, President Song said. We are ready to discuss formal relations with the Galactic Confederation. Admiral Jun studied the humans carefully. Your species has hidden itself for centuries while watching us. Some in the Confederation see this as concerning behavior. President Song's expression didn't change. We needed time to heal our world and understand our neighbors. Would you have preferred we reached out while still fighting among ourselves, with weapons that could destroy planets? The Admiral's eyes widened slightly. You possess such weapons. We did, President Song replied. We dismantled most of them, but we remember how to build them. Knowledge, once gained, is hard to erase. A tense silence filled the room. Lieutenant G, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. If I may, Admiral, he said, I spent the past week studying human history and abilities. They could have contacted us years ago, possibly as a military threat. Instead, they waited until they had something positive to offer the Confederation. Admiral Jun looked surprised at G's defense of the humans. And what do they have to offer? Show him, Captain Ta said to the humans. Director Sun nodded and activated a portable display device. Images appeared in the air showing planets, barren, damaged worlds with toxic atmospheres and radiation. These are worlds the Confederation has classified as wastelands, Sun explained. Uninhabitable and not worth the resources to fix. Correct, Admiral Jun confirmed. No species can survive in such conditions, and terraforming costs more than the worlds are worth. President Song stepped forward. We disagree. Earth was once in worse condition than many of these planets. We have the technology and the adapted biology to restore them. Another human entered the room, carrying what looked like a simple metal box. He placed it on the table and opened it. Inside was dark soil with small green plants growing. This is Scientist Lee, Ambassador Kim introduced, creator of our environmental restoration technology. Scientist Lee gestured to the box. This soil was taken from the radiation zone of a former war area. It was dead, poisoned earth. These plants are specially designed to clean soil and air. They grow 10 times faster than normal plants and can survive in almost any environment. Science Officer Han leaned forward to examine the plants. Remarkable. And you've used these on Earth? Yes, Lee nodded. Along with thousands of other species we've adapted. Together, they form a system that can transform dead worlds into living ones within decades instead of centuries. Admiral Jun looked skeptical. And you offer this technology to the Confederation? We offer partnership, President Song clarified. Earth will share our environmental restoration technology. In exchange, we ask for official recognition and the right to help restore planets the Confederation has abandoned. Captain Ta watched the Admiral's reaction carefully. Jun was known as a traditionalist who followed Confederation rules strictly. This unusual offer from a newly discovered species clearly made him uncomfortable. There's something else you should know, Lieutenant G added. The humans have already been helping other species. President Song nodded. On the edges of Confederation space, we found 3 developing civilizations struggling on damaged worlds. We've been quietly helping them restore their environments. Admiral Jun's expression hardened. That is against Confederation law. Non-member species cannot interfere with developing worlds. We aren't members yet, Ambassador Kim pointed out, and these species were dying. Should we have watched and done nothing, as the Confederation did? The room fell silent again. Captain Ta decided to speak. Admiral, he said, I've seen what humans can do. They transform wastelands into gardens. They adapt to environments that would kill us. And they value life even on worlds we've written off as worthless. The Confederation needs their perspective. Admiral Jun was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he looked at President Song. What exactly are you proposing? A joint restoration initiative, she replied promptly. Humans and Confederation scientists working together to bring life back to abandoned worlds. We start with 10 planets. If successful, we expand the program. The Admiral considered this. And these restored worlds, who would claim them? No one, President Song said firmly. They would be open to settlement by species who need new homes, under Confederation oversight. This isn't about claiming territory. It's about creating more habitable worlds for all. Lieutenant G's scales showed patterns of excitement. Admiral, think of the possibilities. Hundreds of worlds we've classified as wastelands could become homes for millions. Admiral Jun looked at the small plants growing in the box of once dead soil. Then he looked at the humans, beings who had survived when their world was toxic and broken, who had rebuilt rather than surrendered. The Confederation Council will need to vote, he said finally. But I will support your proposal, President Song. 3 months later, Captain Tai stood on the bridge of a new ship, the Restoration. It was a joint human Confederation vessel, specially designed to carry environmental recovery teams to damaged worlds. Beside him stood Lieutenant G, now officially assigned as liaison officer to Earth. His scales showed the bright patterns of pride and purpose. Our first mission, Jay said, looking at the view screen showing a dusty red planet. Rigel 7. Abandoned after a mining disaster 200 years ago. A wasteland, Captain Ta said. Then he smiled, but not for long. The human crew members worked alongside aliens from 5 different Confederation species. Among them was Scientist Lee, directing the loading of special plants and soil bacteria into deployment pods. Captain, a voice called from the communication station. It was Science Officer Han, speaking from her new position at the Confederation Science Academy on Earth. The Council has approved 3 more planets for the restoration program. The success of your mission has convinced even the skeptics. Tell them we'll be ready, Tay replied. Once we finish with Rigel 7. As the restoration moved into orbit around the red planet, Captain Tai thought about how much had changed. Just months ago, he had been mapping unremarkable star systems, passing by wasteland planets without a second thought. Now, he led a mission that would transform one of those wastelands into a living world. All because his ship had stopped to take a closer look at a planet that, according to old records, had nothing worth seeing. He watched as the first shuttles launched toward the surface, carrying humans who could breathe the thin, toxic air with only minimal protection. They would prepare the way for the rest of the team. Remarkable creatures, humans, Lieutenant G said, standing beside him. They see possibility where we saw only waste. Yes, Captain Todd agreed. They remind us of an important truth we have forgotten. What's that, Captain? Ta looked at the red planet below, imagining how it would look in 10 years. Blue waters, green plants, and new life where there had been only dust for centuries. That nothing is truly a wasteland, he said, not if you're willing to work hard enough to change it. The first message came up from the surface, a human voice, calm and confident. Ground team to restoration. We've landed and soil samples are even better than expected. This world is ready to live again. Captain Ta smiled. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was a very good thing.